Awesome, thank you. And we will move on to our next one. Maurice Boothe Jr. Is going to be presenting his game, Mistoria. Or should I say Mistoria?
Either works. Hello, everyone. My name is Maurice Boothe Jr., and I will be presenting today Mistoria, a narrative tool for language learning. Starting with the quotes, I took Spanish back in high school, but I don't remember any of it. So for those unfamiliar, this was the single most popular statement that I heard when I would share with someone that I was a Spanish teacher. As you can imagine, it was quite sad to be constantly reminded of this. But the truth is that learning a language isn't easy. It takes time, takes practice, it takes resources, and yet I would argue that it's still worthwhile. And I'm not alone in this feeling. Over the last 50 years, over 100 papers have been published documenting the benefits that come from learning a second language. This, combined with the more obvious benefit of actually communicating with each other, it's really unfortunate that so many learners are missing out on the chance to become fluent in another language. And this here is my problem. There are a number of factors getting in the way of learning a second language, especially in our schools. Inconsistent exposure, where students just don't get to be around it enough. Sometimes there's a limit to how much language a student can get because it's so dependent on their teacher. And finally, when they do get enough language practice, the activities just aren't meaningful. Now, that's not to say that there haven't been other solutions to this problem. Apps like Duolingo and Google Translate are out there. They try to help. But these solutions aim to teach language explicitly or to replace the need to have to learn a new language at all. I, on the other hand, would like to propose a more compelling solution. My design solution leverages the affordances of these three areas of practice: second language acquisition theory, games for learning, and learning analytics. This means to consider factors like ensuring the language that the learners are exposed to makes sense to them, giving them repeated practice in meaningful contexts, or providing a system that adapts to how they're performing. And for my design, I propose a combination of a narrative-driven game and a learning tool that helps students learn a second language. This design is named Mistoria. The design of Mistoria is built around a strong narrative, reminiscent of role-playing games, where the player is the one driving the story. This design also includes an adaptive dialogue system that I'll explain just a bit further. So here is a quick little example. So this could be a character from the game. You're in a dialogue conversation with her and she says something like, "Oh no, my dog has run away. Have you seen him? His name is Max." You're then presented with a few options to choose from in order to respond. As you're sitting here thinking about what to say, a little progress bar pops up and starts ticking down because you're in a conversation. You can't just wait forever as you're thinking of what to say. So you go ahead, you make a decision. You say, "I think I saw this dog running around in the park." And she responds appropriately. She says, "Thank you so much. I'll go check the park then." But what if you picked something else? What if you instead picked, "Do you want to meet my cat? His name is also Max." You're going to get a response from her that is appropriate. "Oh no, your cat. I don't want to meet your cat. Can't you see I'm worried about my dog?" Or what if instead you don't answer at all? What if you wait for the timer to tick all the way down? She's also going to respond saying, "Okay, it seems you can't help me. Don't worry about it. I'll keep looking." So on the back end, the game is keeping track of how the player is doing. By using an artificial intelligence algorithm like Bayesian knowledge tracing, we can provide the information as feedback to the player. This could include inferring whether or not the system thinks they know a given word based on their responses, information on the number of times they've seen or practiced a word, as well as a representation of which proficiency level they're currently performing at. So now let me show you real quick what this could look like. This is a demo that I built just so you can kind of visualize what this is. So you have this all in Spanish. If you click here on the data tab, it actually show what probability you know the different aspects of the language. So if you end up picking something correct, it'll actually update and say, "Hey, we think that you, high confidence, 99% that you know what these words mean." Whereas if you say something incorrectly, it will actually go ahead and respond by giving you the appropriate values. So with further iteration and feedback, Mistoria is going to be built alongside a role-playing game that takes advantage of this mechanic with added features like voice dialogue and interacting with multiple characters at once. Mistoria, with its adaptive dialogue system, narrative-driven game world, it can provide players with a compelling learning game experience that will help them to gain fluency and proficiency in a second language. So thank you. Feel free to reach out with comments or questions, and also check out the demo that I linked on my thesis page.
Great. Do we have questions in the chat? One from Patricia. Is this meant for learners with no knowledge of the language, or is there some exposure needed ahead of time?
Yeah, so to know exactly where the floor is going to be with like the language, there's going to have to be like more design practice with it. I want it to be something that if you know nothing, it can start at a super, super basic level, and then it helps bring you into it a bit more. Going to the top end, if it's like someone that's super versed in the language, that's like an expert in Spanish, I still want it to be engaging. So it's trying to capture both ends of the spectrum and everything in between.
Awesome. And another quick question, this one from Camellia. Tell us more about your thinking on pros and cons of enabling real-time speech recognition versus just text options.
Yeah, so that has been, in this design, it was a lot of how do I capture like the game-like elements of like a role-playing game, but also emulate what happens in a conversation. Through the user testing that I did do, it was like that was like the sweet spot of just kind of doing like a dialogue selection. When I did propose the idea of having a voice recognition system, the feedback I got was, hey, that'd be cool to like select a dialogue, but make sure it's optional. So I think we're finding something about hesitation of just people talking at their game in order to engage with it. So that's something to explore further though.
Excellent. I think we will move on. Definitely check out the chat in case there's definitely a lot of congratulations and maybe some more questions. We're going to move on to